Now let's move to question banks. How to create question banks. After deploying the test, okay, question banks. What is question banks on Moodle? Question banks on Moodle, it's a question pool. We call it a question pool, which is a collection of questions that is stored for repeated use. This is the real definition in Blackboard. And you can use pools to create tests and surveys. And you can use export and import tools for use in tests for other courses. Instructors typically use pools to create the database of questions they can reuse in multiple tests. When you create a test in the original course view, you can use random blocks to be sure each student receives a different version of the test. Random block draw questions from the pool only, so must first create at least one question pool. Okay, let's watch together this video about question banks in Blackboard.
In this video, we're going to look at how to build a test in Blackboard using Blackboard's test creation tools. Rather than simply build a test, we're going to show you how you can use question pools and random blocks of questions to make it more difficult for students to cheat through collaboration and answer sharing. To get started creating a test using question pools, open the Course Tools header, then choose Test Surveys and Pools. If you plan to create, say, a 45 question test using only 45 questions, you could go straight to Tests and then click Build Test and start adding questions. But we want to create a 45 question test that pulls questions randomly from a pool of 75 questions. This will result in each student getting essentially a different test, different questions in a different order. So instead, on the Test Surveys and Pools page, we'll start out by clicking Pools. Creating tests this way often raises concerns about the validity and fairness of the test. If questions are being pulled from a pool, how can we be sure each student is being tested on all the objectives? Particularly when a pool is large relative to the number of questions. Well, the best way to do this is to create multiple question pools. For this example, we're creating a test for Module 1. Module 1 has 3 objectives. So we want 2 question pools for each objective. One consisting of questions that test for basic understanding, which I've labeled competent, and one that tests for deeper understanding, which I've labeled proficient. Depending on the particulars of your test, you may want to break your questions up into fewer or more pools, but hopefully this example gives you an idea of how you can use multiple pools to improve validity while using randomization. So let's look at how to create a pool. First, we click Build Pool. And then we enter a name for our pool, and if we'd like a description. Then we click Submit. Before we start adding questions, let's look at the question settings. Here we can set a number of defaults for what appears on the question page. For example, if we want to include feedback for each individual answer option, we can check this box here, or if not, we can leave this unchecked. The same goes for images, files, and web links. If we want to add an image, file, or a web link to each individual answer option, we can do that here. Or if we want to include that for feedback, we can add that here. Similarly, if we want to include or not include metadata, we can have this box checked. If we want to set a default point value for questions, we can enter that here and check this box. It was 2. And then we can change some display options here. So we'll leave this at sort of the default settings. And now let's look at creating a question. Just point to create question, and you see there's a number of question types available. We're not going to go into every single type that's on this list. Instead, let's focus on the multiple choice question type, which is one of the most commonly used, just to look at some of the things that are most common about how the question setup works. You'll notice there's a space for a question title. This is sort of a short reference point for each question. You can have a title. It's not required. You notice on the pool page, once we set things up, the full question doesn't appear by default. So if you put in a good question title, you can identify what the question is without having to see the full question text. Then next is the space for the question text, where you put in the prompt. And then under options, the options are going to vary depending on the type of question you're doing. For multiple choice, I have the option to change the answer numbering style if I want no numbering style, which is the default, or numbers, Roman numerals, uppercase or lowercase letters. Do I want the answers to appear vertically or horizontally? Do I want to allow partial credit? And if I do allow partial credit, I can also say negative scores for incorrect answers. And then the last option, do I want to randomize the answer options? The next space is for the answers. You notice that the default number of answers is 4, but I can add more answer options up to 100 just by changing the number here. If I want to have less than 4 answer options, I just scroll over to the side on one of the answer options and click remove, and that will delete it from the list. Next, there's a column for the correct answer. I just select the radio button for the answer that is correct. And then enter your answer option text in the answer space. And then if I've selected to allow for partial credit, I can enter a partial credit value where appropriate in the partial credit percentage space. If I put a negative value there, then that would make a negative score for that incorrect answer. At the bottom here, we have a space for correct response feedback or incorrect response feedback and incorrect response feedback. Both are optional. And then at the bottom, the metadata for the question. Do I want to add category, topic, level of difficulty, keywords? I can just click add and type in a term, and that will apply the keyword to this question. That can be useful for pulling in questions from a pool of questions of a particular type into a test or another pool. I can search by keyword, level of difficulty, topic, or category. The last space is for instructor notes. That can be helpful if you are sharing your test with other folks and you want to provide some background information on the question. When you're done, you can either click submit and create another question of this type, or just click submit and add this question and then perhaps add a question of another type.